Hare Krishna, welcome to this special program on the systematic study of the topmost among all the Vedic scriptures, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Before we begin today's session, I shall chant a few prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayeta Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtiki Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, I would like to welcome everyone again for this special program on the systematic study of the topmost among all the Vedic scriptures, the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam contains a total of 12 cantos, 335 chapters and 18,000 shlokas. We have already completed the study and analysis of the first two cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which have been described in the Vedic scriptures to be the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. The Srimad Bhagavatam itself is the direct sound literary incarnation of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. And the first two cantos represent the lotus feet of the divine form of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Today we are going to begin the study and analysis of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam contains 33 chapters and 1416 shlokas or verses. Third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam has 33 chapters, 1416 shlokas. The main content and subject matter of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the Vidura Maitreya Samvada, the conversation between Vidura and Samvada that begins with how Vidura left the capital city of Hastinapura and went on a pilgrimage where he first met with the great pure devotee Uddhava, who is an eternal associate of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So there is the description of the meeting of Vidura with Uddhava, and after that is the meeting of Vidura with the great sage Maitreya at the holy place of Haridwara, which is also known as Gangadwara. So in this Vidura Maitreya Samvada, in the conversation of Vidura and Maitreya, there is the description of the entire process of material creation in all its details. So beginning with the universal creation of the Virat Rupa, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, and then there is the description of the manifestation of the birth of Brahma from Garbhodakashay Vishnu, and then the creation, the various divisions of creation that emerged henceforth after the creation of Lord Brahma, the creation of the Kumaras and the various other personalities at the beginning of creation is described. there is also the very, very interesting scientific and precise calculation of Kala or time, which is very beautifully described in the 11th chapter of the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There is also then the appearance of the Supreme Lord in his incarnation, in his avatara as Varaha Avatara. The first among the Leela avatars of the Supreme Lord is Lord Varaha, who appeared in the divine form of a boar, and his Leelas, his pastimes have been described in the 3rd canto. And then there is the very, very beautiful narration of the ideal householders, the sublime history of the great sage Kardama and Devahuti, who are the topmost, the best among the Grihastha, among the householder devotees of the Supreme Lord. And then there is a description of another incarnation of the Supreme Lord as Kapila Deva, who appeared as the son of Devahuti and Kardama. And later the teachings of Lord Kapila to his mother Devahuti, which are known as Sankhya Yoga, are very nicely explained in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So these are the principal subject matters of the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So now let us start from the beginning of the 3rd canto. In the first chapter of the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam describes, it begins with the instruction of Shukadeva Goswami. Shri Shuka Uvacha Evametat pura prishto Maitreyo Bhagavan kila Kshatra vanam pravishtena Tyaktva swagriham riddhimat. It explains how Shukadeva Goswami continues narrating to Parikshit Maharaj that the great pure devotee Vidura left his opulent palace and home in Hastinapura and went to the forest, to the holy sacred place of Gangadwara or Haridwara, where he met the great sage Maitreya and took instructions from him. So when Shukadeva Goswami was about to narrate the history of the meeting of Vidura with Maitreya, Parikshit very inquisitively inquired the reason for Vidura to leave his home and palace at Hastinapura. So this incident happened. The leaving of Vidura from Hastinapura took place before the battle of Mahabharata. So Shukadeva Goswami explained that how before the battle between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, when Yudhishthira and the Pandavas asked for their rightful claim from Dhritarashtra, consulted, he would always, his main consultant was Vidura, his younger brother Vidura, who always gave him the best of moral, social, kingly and spiritual instructions. So all this is the instructions of Vidura are known as Vidura Niti. So at that time when Dhritarashtra inquired from Vidura about what should be done in the circumstances, Vidura gave the best counsel, the best advice to Dhritarashtra by instructing him that you should completely stop being dictated by the evil-minded son of yours, that is Duryodhana, and all his company and party of like-minded evil people like Shakuni, Dushasana, Karna. So you should stop listening to Duryodhana, otherwise your entire family dynasty would be destroyed by the evil intents and actions of Duryodhana. So when Vidura was advising and counseling Dhritarashtra in this manner, there arrived Duryodhana accompanied by Shakuni, Dushasana, Karna and all his teammates. So they came and they were highly offended by this kind of statements by Vidura, and Duryodhana, although he was supposed to always honor Vidura was his uncle, yet the younger brother of Dhritarashtra, yet Duryodhana used very harsh words and very strongly abused and insulted Vidura. He called him as Dasi Putra, as the son of a maid servant, and also gave the suggestion that this person is a traitor. Vidura is a traitor and he should be thrown out of the palace, thrown out of the kingdom. So being insulted in this manner, Vidura immediately on his own accord gave up his royal symbols and immediately, without any further delay, left from Hastinapura, left his palace and home and went on a pilgrim's journey. So during the battle of Mahabharata, Vidura was not present. He did not participate in the battle of Mahabharata, but he was on a pilgrim's journey of a Tirtha Yatra. He went on a pilgrimage to all the various holy sacred places like Ayodhya, Kashi, Dwaraka, and after visiting many holy places, he came to Prabhasa Kshetra, where he heard of the news of the disappearance of the Yadava dynasty and also of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna having returned to the spiritual world back to his eternal kingdom. So after being aggrieved to hear of this news, although I have already explained in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Lord and all his eternal associates is completely on the spiritual platform, and there is absolutely no material condition of grief or death. There is nothing called death either for the eternal associates like the Yadavas or for the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So just like the sun rises and sets in the evening, so only the most foolish or an insane or crazy person would say that the sun took birth in the morning and died in the evening. So yet the appearance and the presence of the Supreme Lord in the material world at different occasions during that window of time is the most auspicious time for all the living beings. So Vidura became aggrieved to hear of the disappearance of the Yadava dynasty along with the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and he further continued on his pilgrimage and reached the kingdom of Kurujangala. He came to the banks of the sacred river Yamuna, where he met one of the greatest pure devotees of the Supreme Lord, one of the most intimate eternal associates of Lord Shri Krishna, whose name is Uddhava. So Uddhava is the most intimate friend and eternal associate of Lord Shri Krishna in Dwaraka. Just like in Vrindavana, the dearmost and the most intimate friend, Sakha of Krishna, is Sri Dama. And later in the Gurukul of Krishna, at the Gurukul of Sandipani Muni, the most dear friend, the dearmost friend of Krishna is Sudama, and later in Hastinapura his dearmost and most intimate friend is Arjuna. Likewise in Dwaraka his dearmost friend and most intimate eternal associate is Uddhava. So Vidura met Uddhava in the province of Kurujangala on the banks of river Yamuna, and then there is the very wonderful conversation between Vidura and Uddhava, which is very beautifully described in chapter 2 and 3 of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vidura met the great Mahabhagavata, the great devotee Uddhava, and there were many wonderful exchange of transcendental spiritual topics, especially about the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. It is described in the second chapter, in the second verse, that the great spiritual qualities of Uddhava have been mentioned and described here, that Yap Panchahaya no Matra Pratarashaya Yachitaha Tannaichad Rachayan Yasya Sapariyam Balalilaya. That even Panchahayana, when Uddhava was just 5 years, he was so intensely absorbed in the thought and service of Lord Shri Krishna that even when he was called by his mother for Prataha Ashaya, for his morning breakfast, he desired to continue in his bhakti seva, in his devotional service to Lord Krishna, and was not even impelled by the basic urges of hunger. So that was the supreme devotional service of Uddhava. Sakatham sevaya tasya kalena jarasam gataha prishto vartam pratibhruyat bhaktuhu padavanusmaran. So as Uddhava, with every moment and year of his life, his devotional service to Shri Krishna and his remembrance became more and more intense. So that is the nature of a pure devotee like Uddhava. It is not that his bhakti decreased with age, but with every passing year, with every passing moment, his devotional service increased infinitely. And when he was thus questioned by Vidura, Uddhava began to narrate the most wonderful divine pastimes of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. In the second chapter of the third canto, Uddhava intensely remembers the divine Leela, the pastimes of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna in Vrindavana. So the Vrindavana Leela of Shri Krishna is the most confidential, the most mysterious, the most secret, and the most intimate of all the Leelas of Shri Krishna. So these were intensely remembered by Uddhava to Vidura, and in these remembrances we also find the very beautiful shloka, which is in 3.2.23, which is also the one particular and specific verse that was taught by Vedavyasa when his child Shukadeva Goswami, immediately after taking birth, he transformed to a 16-year-old boy as a youth of 16 years, and without even looking at his father and mother, because Shukadeva Goswami was already mukta, already liberated right at the time of his birth. He left his parents, and when he went away, I had already described this in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So when Shukadeva Goswami went away, Vedavyasa finally decided to call back, to make Shukadeva return back. He called all the inhabitants of the forest dwellers, and taught him one shloka from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is this one, 3.2.23, which is spoken by Uddhava to Vidura, wherein he describes, this verse describes the most merciful nature of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna in his dealings with a demoness by named Putana. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapayayadapya apyasadvi lebhegatim dhatruchitam tatonyam kamva dayalum sharanam gajema. Uddhava says that where can we find a more merciful personality than the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, who even so it is explained here that in this verse, the most merciful quality of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna is described by Uddhava here very beautifully, that Putana, who had come with the intention of killing Krishna, although Krishna can never ever be killed, being the eternal supreme personality of Godhead, yet when Putana came with the intention of killing Krishna by smearing poison, by giving Krishna poison smeared milk on her breast, Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam. So in spite of such an attitude of Putana, because she had come to feed her milk with externally like a mother, Krishna was so merciful that he not only sucked out her milk, but he sucked out her life air, and also gave Dhatruchitam, he gave the position of a mother in the spiritual world as an eternal mother to the Supreme Lord, to himself. So such is the mercy of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. And Uddhava remembers that Kamvadayalum Sharanam Rajema. Where, alas, where can I find a more merciful personality than the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna? So in this way, Uddhava very intensely remembered the divine pastimes of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna in Vrindavana. And then in the third chapter of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhava continues his intense remembrance of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, his divine leelas outside of Vrindavana, in Mathura, how he fought with the demon king Kamsa, he killed him, and later Uddhava also remembered his Dwaraka Leela, his pastimes in the realm of Dwaraka Nagari, and also his pastimes in the great battle of Mahabharata at Kurukshetra. So, as Vidura remembered all these pastimes, it is further explained in 3.4.12 that the supreme characteristics of the supreme spiritual devotional qualifications of Uddhava have been further explained by Shukadeva Goswami that when Uddhava finally, after explaining after describing the divine pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna, finally, after the disappearance of the Yadava dynasty at Prabhasa Kshetra or Somnath, he approached the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, who was seated underneath a Pippala tree, which is even today present, which is known as the Jnana Pippala. And when Uddhava approached him for taking further instructions, Krishna then gave him the very, very wonderful instructions in the form of Uddhava Gita. Uddhava Gita is very elaborately explained in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, just like the instructions of Lord Krishna to Arjuna are famously known as Bhagavad Gita. Likewise, the instructions of Krishna to Uddhava are known as Uddhava Gita. Krishna personally says that Sa Esha Sadho Charamo Bhavanam Asaditaste Madanugraho Yat Yenmam Nrilokan Raha Utsrijantam Dishtya Dadrishvan Vishadanu Virtya. Krishna gives complete assurance to Uddhava that your present life, earlier Uddhava was a Vasu. Vasu is one of the three kinds of principal devatas. So Krishna gives assurance to Uddhava that Bhavan, this is your Charamaha, this is your last life in this material world, and the best life because you have become my eternal associate. You are now going to be awarded by my ultimate favor and mercy. You can now proceed. Krishna is giving this direct assurance to Uddhava that you can now proceed and go to my supreme transcendental abode, Vaikuntha-loka, leaving this universe of the conditioned living entities. Your visit to me now in this place is still present in Somnath. It is known as Bhaluka Tirtha, where Krishna instructed Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita. So Krishna says that this is because of your pure and unflinching devotional service that you have met me. So the last meeting of Krishna is with the great devotee and his eternal associate Uddhava. So Krishna gave the complete teaching of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He says that in earlier times in the Brahma Kalpa, I had spoken. Krishna says that I had instructed the Srimad Bhagavatam to Lord Brahma, and now I am going to give you the same instructions of the Srimad Bhagavatam to you, O Uddhava. So in this way, Krishna instructed the Srimad Bhagavatam to Uddhava, and that is specifically known as the Uddhava Gita. And after that, when Uddhava now in his conversation, so he narrated all these events to Vidura and then was completely absorbed in intense feelings of Vipralambha or Viraha or separation from the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So at that time, Vidura requested very eagerly Uddhava to instruct him in the same teachings what had been given by Krishna to Uddhava. But Uddhava, being of a very humble disposition, and also being in an inferior position to Vidura, felt embarrassed to instruct Vidura, who was like his uncle. So Vidura was guided by Uddhava. Uddhava said that actually I have already been instructed by the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna to proceed to the holy place of Badarinath or Badarikashrama. Soham tad darshanahlada viyogakti yuta prabho. That now I am in intense, Uddhava was in viyoga or viraha, was in intense feelings of spiritual separation from the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Gamishye daitam tasya badariyashrama mandalam. That now I am proceeding to Badarinath or Badarikashrama, where yatra narayano devo narascha bhagavan rishihi mrudutivram tapo dirgham tepate loka bhavanau. There in Badarikashrama, the Supreme Lord in his another incarnation of Naranarayana are present, and I have been sent by Krishna to go and meet Naranarayana, Rishi and all other great sages in Badarikashrama. Actually, Krishna had sent a very confidential message with Uddhava to be taken to the sages of Badarinath or Badarikashrama. So in this way, Uddhava declined to become the spiritual instructor or the spiritual master or guru of Vidura, but he directed Vidura that at the same time when Krishna instructed me in the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, at the same time there was also another personality who was present and who also heard the same instructions from the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and that personality is Maitreya, the great sage Maitreya. So Uddhava asked Vidura to approach the great sage Maitreya in order to receive further instructions. And we find in the 5th chapter of the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam the meeting of Vidura with Maitreya Rishi at the holy place called Gangadwara or Haridwara. Haridwara, which is located presently in the North Indian state of Uttarakhand. So Haridwar, the exact place where Vidura and Maitreya met, is known as Sapta Sarovara, the Sapta Rishi Ashrama, which is even today present in the holy place of Haridwar. So now Vidura has come to Haridwar, to the ashrama of Maitreya Muni, and Vidura requested Maitreya to instruct him in the supreme teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, as he had received directly from the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna at Prabhasa Kshetra at Somanath. So Maitreya then began to explain these teachings. Maitreya first congratulated Vidura by saying in 3.5.18, Maitreya uvacha sadhu prishtam tvaya sadho lokan sadhvag anugrihnata kirtim vitanvata loke Atmano dhokshajatmanaha. He congratulated Vidura that Vidura, all glory unto you. You have inquired from me of the greatest of all goodness, and in this way your inquiry, actually even Maitreya recognized the great spiritual position of Vidura and explained that actually Vidura's inquiries to Maitreya were to show the greatest mercy to the entire world. So in this way, many times we find that the great personalities, great spiritual personalities act, although they are great spiritual masters, they also act as great students in order to teach the entire world the significance of the path, of the right path to approach a spiritual master in order to attain divine transcendental knowledge. So this was the path adopted even by Vidura, and this was recognized by Maitreya Muni. So Maitreya further glorifies that you are the son of the great sage Vedavyasa and are already situated in complete divine knowledge, transcendental knowledge. Yet because you are inquiring, I shall narrate to you the same teachings that I had heard from the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So now Maitreya begins his instructions to Vidura. So this is the section known as the Vidura Maitreya Samvada, the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. So Vidura is now acting as a student and Maitreya is the guru, the spiritual master. So we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam very important, the best of the spiritual discourses and discussions that took place between the greatest of the spiritualists and transcendentalists of the entire universe. There are many times a mixture of many conversations. There are conversations within some conversations. There is the first assembly that is happening at Naimisharanya, the discussion between Suta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya headed by Shaunaka Rishi, and then again Suta Goswami is quoting the conversation between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, and in that conversation Shukadeva Goswami is quoting many other conversations like the Vidura Maitreya Samvada. So the main focus should be on the spiritual content of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So now Maitreya begins his teachings and instructions first by offering some very wonderful prayers which were also offered by the Devatas, by the demigods to the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. One among those prayers, a very beautiful prayer, is recorded in 3.5.41 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Marganti yette mukha padmanidesh chandas supagne rishayo vivikte yad pada yasyagamakshoda saridvaraya padam tirtha pada prapannaha. The Devatas offer this prayer that the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna are the greatest shelter of all the places of pilgrimage. All the great clear-minded sages, carried by the wings of the Vedas and the Vedic hymns, always search for the nest of your lotus-like face. Many of these great sages, they surrender to your lotus feet at every step. Padam tirtha pada prapannaha. And they take shelter of the best of the rivers. Sarid Varaya, which is Ganga Nadi, which has emanated from the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and therefore is Aghamarshadaha, can completely vanquish all the sinful reactions of all living entities. So like this, Maitreya offers many wonderful prayers to the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and then in the 6th chapter, he explains the creation of the universal form of the gigantic Virat Rupa. This subject matter has also been described earlier in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the first chapter, the description of the Virat Rupa has been explained by Shukadeva Goswami. And further, in the 8th chapter of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Maitreya explains the manifestation or the birth of Brahma from Garbhodakashay Vishnu, the second expansion of the Purusha Avatara of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So how at the beginning of creation, the Supreme Lord in his incarnation, in his second Purusha incarnation as the Garbhodakashay Vishnu, gave birth. So this is very beautifully explained in 3.8.15 as Talloka Padmam Sa'u Eva Vishnuhu Pravi Vishat Sarva Gunavabhasam Tasmin Swayam Vedamayo Vidhata Swayam Bhuvam Yam Smavadanti Sobhut. In that universal lotus flower, Lord Vishnu personally entered as the Paramatma, and then when it was impregnated with the three modes of material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom or Lord Brahma was generated. Tasyam cha sa chambhoruha karnikayam avasthito lokam apashyamanaha parikraman vyomni vivritta netraha chatvari lebhenu disham mukhani. After Lord Brahma was born, he could not see anything around him. There was complete darkness, and he therefore went and looked very eagerly in all the four directions, and in that way he became Chaturmukha, or he developed four faces, and therefore he is known as Chaturmukha Brahma, or the four-faced Brahma. So finally, Lord Brahma he searched everywhere very eagerly, and finally he saw nothing. He just saw a complete darkness, and he deeply contemplated that who am I? Ka esho asam, and what is this lotus flower, and everything else is darkness here. There must be something downwards which is the origin of even the lotus flower, the stem of the lotus flower. And in this way, as Brahma began to deeply contemplate, finally he heard, as we had also heard this in the previous canto, in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma heard the two letters of tapa. He performed tapasya, and finally he had the revelation of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world, in the Vaikuntha Loka. So after that, Lord Brahma, being instructed by Lord Vishnu, he began the process of creation of Srishti. But before beginning the process of Sarga and Visarga, Lord Brahma offered many wonderful prayers. So the 9th chapter of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam contains the very beautiful and important prayers offered by Lord Brahma for creative energy. So these are very beautifully described in the 9th chapter of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. A few of these prayers are in 3.9.5. Lord Brahma prays to the Supreme Lord Vishnu as Ye tu tvadiya charanambuja kosha gandham jigranti karna vivare shruti vatanitam bhaktya grihita charana paraya chatesham napeshinatha hridayam buruhat swapumsam. O my Supreme Lord, persons who smell the aroma, the fragrance of your lotus feet, carried by the air of the Vedic sounds through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service, your bhakti. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. Similarly, there is another very beautiful prayer offered in the 11th verse of the 9th chapter, wherein Lord Brahma prays, Tvam bhakti yoga paribhavita hrit saroja ase Shrute shitapatho nanunatha pumsam yad yadhiyata urugaya vibhavayanti tad tadvapu pranayase sadanugrahaya. O my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of shravanam, of bona fide hearing, and thus their heart becomes completely cleansed, and you become manifest in the hearts of such pure devotees. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest in various eternal forms of transcendence in which they constantly think of you. Another beautiful prayer of Lord Brahma is in the 25th verse, wherein he says that So savadabhra karuno bhagavan vivriddha premasmitena nayanam buruham vijrimbhan utthaya vishva vijayaya chano vishadam madhvya gira panayatat purusha puranaha. The Lord, who is supreme and is the original personality of Godhead, is also unlimitedly merciful. I wish that he may smilingly bestow his benediction upon me by opening his lotus eyes. He can uplift the entire cosmic creation and remove all the miseries by kindly speaking his nectarian words. So, in this way, Lord Brahma offered many wonderful prayers to Lord Vishnu, and then, being inspired and directed by the Supreme Lord, Brahma now began the actual process of creation. So these were the questions asked by Parikshit Maharaj to Shukadeva Goswami in the 8th chapter of the 2nd canto. He asked about 37 questions, and all of these are being sequentially answered by Shukadeva Goswami through the Vidura Maitreya Samvada by citing another conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. So now in the 10th chapter of the 3rd canto, the various varieties and the exact process of creation is very technically and very precisely described by Maitreya to Vidura. So the 10th chapter of the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the various divisions of creation. So this is very nicely explained in 3.10.14 as the creation has 9 divisions. There are 9 divisions of creation. Sargo navavidhastasya prakrito vaikritastu yaha kala dravya gunerasya trividaha pratisankramaha. There are basically 9 varieties or 9 divisions of creation, and again there are 2 categories of in these 9 divisions. The first 6 belong to the category of Prakrita Sarga. Prakrita Sarga means elemental creation. Sarga or creation has got 2 divisions. Prakrita Sarga, Vaikrita Sarga, elemental creation and the qualitative creation. And afterwards, in this there are 6 divisions in Prakrita Sarga and 3 divisions in qualitative creation. And further, Trividaha Pratisankramaha. There are also 3 kinds of annihilation brought about by eternal time, the material elements, and the quality of one's work. So this subject matter of Pratisankramaha or complete destruction would be explained later in the 12th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But now in general it is mentioned here in 3.10.14 that there are 9 kinds of creation and 3 kinds of destruction. So this is actually the very exact science of creation. So this is not something like speculative theory of maybe there was some mass which suddenly exploded and there was a big bang. So why the big bang happened, what was before that, and how can a big bang lead to such systematic and orderly arrangement of the universe, how it happened. So all this is so this is not like the speculative, incomplete and just a imaginary theory. They call it scientific, but it's the most unscientific theory. The real science of creation, the exact precise science of creation is found here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So now the 9 kinds of creation are Adhyastu mahata sargo gunavaishamyam atmanaha dvitiyastu ahamo yatra dravyagyana kriyodayaha. The first creation is the creation of Mahat, of the Mahat Tattva, the sum total of the material ingredients. The second creation is Dvitiyastu Ahamo Yatra, is the creation, the generation of the Ahankara or the false ego, in which the material ingredients, material knowledge and material activities arise. So the third creation is Bhuta Sargastriti Yastu Tanmatro Dravya Shaktiman Chaturtha Aindriya Sargo Yastu Jnana Kriyatmakaha. The third creation is the creation of the Tanmatras, the objects of the senses. And from these the 5 great, the Pancha Mahabhutas are also generated. The Chaturtha, the 4th creation is the creation of knowledge and working capacity of the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas. Vaikariko Deva Sargaha Panchamo Yanmayam Manaha Shashtastu Tamasa Sargo Yastva Buddhi Krita Prabhu. The 5th creation is the creation of the Devatas, of the demigods and of the mind. The 6th creation is the creation of the ignorant darkness of the living entities or of Maya, by which the living entities are completely put into illusion, into ignorance. Shadime prakrita sarga vaikrita napi me shrinu rajo bhajo bhagavato lileyam harimedhasaha. So till now, the first 6 are the Prakrita Sarga or the elemental creation. They are the natural creations by the external energy of the Supreme Lord, Hari Medhasaha, by Lord Hari. And the next 3 creations are the creations known as Visarga, which are the creations made by Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma's creations are known as Visarga, which are the 7th, 8th and 9th. Saptamo Mukhya Sargastu Shadvidhastastu Sham Chayaha Vanaspati Oshadhi Lata Tvakshara Tvaksara Virudho Drumaha. The 7th creation is of all the varieties of the immovable entities like the trees, the plants, the creepers, the various kinds of trees and plants is the 7th creation. The 8th creation is of all the varieties of the animals and aquatics and birds. So this is the 8th creation. And finally, The ninth creation is the creation of the varieties of human beings or the Manushyas. So these are the 9 kinds of creation, and after that is the explanation of the 5th variety of creation, which was Deva Sarga, has again 8 kind of divisions. So the 8 types of Deva Sarga are further explained in 3.10.28 and 29 as Deva Sargascha Ashtavidho Vibudha Pitaro Suraha Gandharvapsarasa Siddha Yaksharaksham Charanaha Bhuta Preta Pishachascha Vidyadhra Kinnaradayaha Dashaite Vidurakhyataha Sargaste Vishvasrikritaha. The creation of the Devatas is of 8 varieties. Deva Sargo Ashtavitaha. The first one of the Devatas, Deva Sarga of the Vibudhaha. The second one is Deva Sarga. Second is Pitra Sarga of the various forefathers. The third is of the Asuras or demons. The fourth is of the Gandharvas and Apsaras. The 5th kind of Deva Sarga is of the Yakshas and Rakshasas. The 6th is the Siddha, Charana and Vidyadharas. The 7th Deva Sarga is the Bhuta, Preta, Pishachas. And the 8th Deva Sarga is the superhuman beings, the celestial singers. So all these are created by Brahma, the creator of the universe, in the various categories of the Devatas. So this is the wonderful description of the various kinds of creation that happen at the beginning of creation. So the subject matter of Sarga and Visarga is very beautifully and succinctly explained in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And next, we will see in the 11th and 12th chapters of the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam the wonderful description, the very, very scientific description of the divisions of Kala. So we shall take up this subject matter tomorrow in the next session. So if you have any questions or inquiries about today's subject matter, you are most welcome to post it in the WhatsApp group or in the comments box of the YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and please do join us for the next session of the systematic study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.